cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, everybody. Welcome to episode number 241 of Sports Cards Live. It's Friday night, September the 27th, 2024. My name is Jeremy Lee. A huge thank you to our title sponsor for tonight's episode, Private Collection Insurance. I want to thank them for their support. And we're also grateful to all of our valued sponsors and partners, including Filth Bomb Breaks, Fund Your Cards, Mint Inc., Just Collect, MC Sports Cards, REA Auctions, Fanatics Collect, 90s Auctions, the Sport Card Expo, the National Sports Collectors Convention, the Van City Card Show, Hobby News Daily, Card Ladder, Slab Sharks, Cloud 10, Upper Deck, and Tag Grading. Their continued partnership make this content possible. I truly appreciate all they do within and for the hobby. Guys, this episode is also available on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. Please follow and subscribe for free and leave a rating or review on your podcast platform. Always thank you to all of our loyal viewers and listeners for your continued and ongoing support. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel or the podcast, please take a moment and do so. As always, your comments and questions are in play tonight. Let's bring out our guest for the evening. He's the owner of Private Collection Insurance, Enzo Ferrari. Welcome to Sports Cards Live. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. Thank you very much. And it's really an honor to be here with you tonight to talk about this very important subject for me.
Yeah, of course. It's an important subject for you. It's an important subject, I think, for a lot of people, and they might not even know it yet. And so first of all, we met at the National in Cleveland. It was one of the extracurricular activities. It was an eBay dinner at Morton's, and it was sort of kind of sit down wherever you want. And we ended up at a table together. We knew Alvis in common, autograph boss, and also coincidentally, tomorrow night on Sports Cards Live, our guest is Rene Nazoda from Storage Wars and Bargain Hunter Breaks, and he was at that table with us as well. So that was a fun evening, wasn't it? We got to hang out, get to know each other a little bit.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was my first time at the National, so something new for me, and it was extremely exciting to be a part of that event.
Yeah, it was great to see it. What took you to the National in the U.S. in Cleveland back in July?
Couple things. One, I am a collector, so I've never been to the National. It was something I've always wanted to do, and we were actually setting up some meetings with with eBay to see if we can work together and provide some kind of coverage for buyers and sellers on their platform. So it was a dual, little bit of pleasure, a little bit of business to go down there, and we met so many fantastic people in the hobby, and it was a lot of fun. And definitely, I'm going to keep going to that event.
Did you manage to buy yourself any cards on the show floor?
Yeah, unfortunately for my wife, I did. I do collect a little Justin Herbert, and there was a card there that I've added to my collection. So I took it easy, but I did manage to find something that day.
And what else do you collect? Because listen, it's always great when somebody is offering a service to the hobby, but is also a collector. What else do you collect?
Right now, my main passion is obviously with my name being Enzo Ferrari. I'm a big F1 fan, and I collect a lot of Formula One cards, and Ferrari being my kind of number one go-to. So I'm a huge Topps F1 2020, which is the rookie year really that those cards came out. So I'm a huge Ferrari collector of F1 cards and a little bit of Justin Herbert. I'm a diehard Charger fan, and it's punishment for being a Charger fan, but I still love Justin Herbert, and I collect a lot of his cards.
Awesome. Right on. So tell us a little bit about Private Collection Insurance and why you started that type of insurance company.
Well, I rekindled my passion for collecting around 2020, 2021. I started collecting again, and I realized I had a large volume of high-valued items in my house, and being an insurance broker, which is my primary occupation, I kind of looked at myself and I said, how are these things insured? And, there's really no coverage for these cards. Typical homeowners policies do not cover collectibles or high valued items unless you schedule them. And most insurance companies shy away from this type of coverage because they just don't understand it. So again, being an insurance broker, I got together with some people in London, Lloyd's of London, and I started this company called Private Collection, which doesn't only insure collectibles or sports cards, but it collects, it insures jewelry, watches, comic book collections, anything really of high value and collectible. So that's really how I got in. There's a huge need for this type of coverage, and I don't think the hobby does it very well. I don't think many people even are aware that they need insurance. I think a lot of them think they're covered under their standard homeowners policy, but it's not covered. You really need to schedule these things and have independent coverage for these high valued items.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if, your typical homeowners policy does a good job in covering these collectibles. And I know that just from experience, you've had to add certain riders or that sort of thing. And so what you're offering now is a completely separate policy. And now if I were to be covered by private collection insurance, would I be able to go to my homeowner policy and say, hey, I don't need this stuff covered anymore? Would that save me any money with my homeowner's policy by chance?
Unless you have it covered specifically, no, you're not going to save any coverage under your home because it's really not covered. There's really standards, there's limits on your policy. I mean, you should check your homeowner's policy as to what those limits are. But normally, collectibles, high valued items, they're not covered under a standard homeowner's policy. Your contents will be covered, your regular clothes, your furniture, things of that nature. But anything of high value or collectible, it's no different really than an engagement ring. Usually if you buy a $30,000-$40,000 engagement ring, that is not covered under your insurance policy. Same with sports cards. And as you know, the values have just kind of skyrocketed over the last few years. So insurance companies will not cover the cost of what you've paid or what your collection is worth.
Now, you mentioned it before, but since you've really jumped into the hobby with not only getting back in collecting yourself, but also providing insurance services, in your experience, what you've seen, are hobbyists and collectors recognizing the need for the insurance for these collections, or are the collective we just kind of taking this risk without even realizing, or we may realize it, but we may just be taking that risk on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month and year-to-year basis. What have you seen out there in the market as far as that goes?
That's probably our biggest challenge, is the education piece of educating the hobbyists that they need coverage. I'd say about 95%, maybe even higher, don't have any coverage on their collections. And when you're walking around the National, you see guys with little suitcases and they're filled with sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars of cards, and they're just walking around without any coverage at all. So the hobby really needs to take note that these things are not covered. There's a huge risk that you're taking. They're not covered under your standard homeowners policy. And, aside from theft, there's so many other things that can happen. I mean, look at what's happened in Florida right now with the hurricane and floods and water damage. Fires happen all the time. These are usually big investments. And to me, I don't really understand why people wouldn't insure their collections. It's again, the values have just become astronomical, and they've become investments. It's not just something to own and have. It's actually an investment. You can kind of see some of the people that are involved in the hobby. They're, millions of dollars are flooding through to the hobby. And again, 99%, more than 95% of the people are just not covered at all. And, part of my job is to educate people as to what can happen and some of the claim scenarios, and to tell people you're not covered. It's not going to be covered under homeowners policy. And why take that chance?
And that can be super devastating. I was at the Philly show last weekend, and I just saw on Instagram today that a guy posted that he had a 1933 Babe Ruth, a Gaudi Babe Ruth, the red background version, stolen. And he said, I'm sitting, he said he thought it was a coordinated effort. I was looking at a collection and they slipped into one of my unlocked showcases and pulled out a card. And, I've been setting up at shows for 20 years, Enzo, and we're going to get into this a bit later, but you got customers at the booth, you're opening this showcase to get a card out. Then you're opening this one. You might put a card in that guy's hand. You might go talk to this guy. If you're on your own, you really need to be diligent with these things. But I want to ask you. I'm going to ask you soon. Like, what scenarios would occur where where I would be covered, and how bad of a vendor do I need to be to maybe not be covered in something? But before we do that, what your advice? What value would you want? And I know it's going to be different for everybody, but typically, at what point would you say it's worthwhile to get insurance? If my collection's worth $10,000, should I consider insurance? 25, 50, 100, or up from there? What sort of clients are you servicing right now, value wise? What do you recommend?
Well, I mean, we insure people that have collections as little as $5,000 all the way up to close to a million and a little bit over in terms of collection. So it really depends on the person and what you think you can absorb in terms of a claim. If you have a smaller collection, you can self-insure. We get that. And if you take precautions, you could worry about it yourself. But once you start to get into that $10, $15, $20,000 range, I mean, you're just taking a huge risk. And again, with values always kind of fluctuating, going up, I mean, it might be $10,000 today, but you have a rookie card and that card goes up in value, and then all of a sudden it's worth 20, 30, 40,000. What we find, and I'm sure you find, is once you're in the hobby, it doesn't take very long for your collection to start adding up, and you kind of get addicted to it, and you start buying and buying and buying, like myself. And so, once you have a policy in place, it's so easy to kind of increase the amounts and increase the values. And, I'm sure we'll get into premiums and what they cost of that nature. But, I'm an insurance guy by trade. I would always place insurance on my collection or anything of high value.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's say hello to the chat. Tom Newman was first to arrive. What's up, Tom? Cardboard Corner, welcome to the show. Mike Double V in the house. What's going on? Jacob Dahl, Robert Scott, good evening. Jake Dahl has a question for you. Enzo, do you collect Lance Allworth, Dan Fouts, Kellen Winslow, and or Charlie Joyner?
Great question. Dan Fouts, yes, definitely. He was probably, I've been a Charger fan forever. So Dan Fouts was really my first quarterback that I fell in love with. And I do have his rookie card. I have Kellen Winslow. I've got some Tomlinson. I've got a little bit of I think I have a Charlie Joyner, that's a really throwback card. I have one of his cards as well. So it's not just the Justin Herberts that I'm collecting. I'm also collecting a lot of the old school. I think I have every quarterback that ever played. I have their rookie card, or at least their card when they were a San Diego Charger, from when the Chargers came into the NFL.
I got to add, what about LaDainian Tomlinson?
Yes, I have his rookie card as well.
And there's one guy whose name is just escaping me right now, but he was a Hall of Fame linebacker, I believe. Oh gosh, he was
not Kellen Winslow.
No, back in the 80s. What was his name? Oh gosh, someone out there has to know. Who am I thinking of, guys? Who am I thinking of? Back in the 80s, he was one of the most impressive. Junior Seau. Jake Dahl comes through for me. Junior, thank you, Mookie. Mookie knows as well. Junior Seau. That's what I'm thinking of. Do you have a Junior Seau?
Definitely have his rookie card as well.
Right on. Gross Bros Parody says people trust safes in their house for cards, but if that safe is engulfed in a fire, wouldn't the plastic top loaders or graded plastic melt, ruining them? I mean, what do you say to that, Enzo?
Yes, I mean, some safes, depends on what kind of safe you have. I mean, some safes are fireproof. I mean, if the heat gets hot enough, obviously, if they're in plastic holders, they're going to melt. And again, that's going back to what we discussed earlier about it's not just theft that we have to worry about. It's water damage, it's smoke damage, it's melting. I mean, it's cardboard and plastic. Sunlight, if you leave them out in the sunlight, I'm sure on a hot summer day, they're going to melt. And that's the kind of stuff that, we insure. Like, that's what we want to make sure that, there's all kinds of things that can happen to your cards, and buying a policy just protects you from that kind of stuff.
You mentioned the sunlight, which makes me think, sunlight will fade autographs. It can sometimes fade the cards too. would an insurance policy cover the devaluation of a card because an autograph faded from bright blue? And if I have a picture of it in my inventory and it's a bright blue autograph, and that autograph fades down to where it's a material change in the appearance of it, such that it would come down in value, would the insurance policy cover that?
That's a tough one. I doubt it, because there's a certain amount of onus on you to make sure the cards, it's almost like wear and tear. The tires on your car aren't insured. It's kind of, not quite the same, but very similar. You're not going to insure something like that, because really you should have taken a little bit more care with your card, obviously.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Of course. Perch, welcome to the show. Glad you're seeing value already. Phil is here. He says Thurman Thomas. He says Emmett Smith, whatever. He's just having fun. Wants to see his name in lights. What's up, Phil? Good to see you as always. Jeff McMahon, good to see you as well. And Orlando from A Collector's Dream is here as well. Okay, so for now, we have a lot of American viewers. You are a Canadian company and you insure Canadian resident collections. Now, before anyone in the US thinks, well, this might not apply to me, and you might not be able to use Enzo's company, Private Collection Insurance. Is that right, Enzo? Are you able to insure US resident collections or only Canadian resident? But wait until after this, everybody from the States.
Yeah, right now we're only able to insure Canadian residents. We are working on licensing in the US. Unfortunately, it does take a bit of time. But our plans are to go obviously across North America. The US market is obviously much bigger than in Canada, but right now we're only able to insure Canadian residents.
And the reason why I say to all the American viewers and listeners to stick around is because, listen, while Enzo himself may not be able to help you yet, he may eventually, and hopefully when he is, you can come and you will come back to him. But I want you to still stick around and listen, because I feel like you need to hear the possibilities about what insurance you should expect out there and what you should be looking for domestically. So take some notes here if you need to. Come back to it, because we're going to go through a lot of scenarios and more issues. So yeah, I can tell it might be disappointing if you would think, oh, this guy's perfect for me, but I can't use him because I'm in the States. Well, at least he's gonna help you understand what you should be looking for in your own domestically for yourself in the States. So do stick around. I think you're going to get some great information here. All right. I want to get into scenarios now in terms of where are my collectibles insured? So right now, if I keep my cards in my house, but I do not have a safe, and I keep them on my shelves, I keep them behind me, I keep them, on my bedside table. Like I've had a few cards there with me recently because I just want to look at them all the time. Obviously, I'm going to be collecting when my cards are in my house. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do I need to have a safe?
No, safes are not prerequisite. The only thing that's prerequisite is an alarm system in your house. That is one. Sorry.
So I need an alarm system in my house to be covered. Now, here's a scenario for you. I might go pick up my kids from school one day. My wife might be grocery shopping or at work, and I might not set my alarm because I just forget to. What happens? And let's face it, the insurance company is going to do some investigation. They're going to talk to the alarm company and say, well, I'm thinking, worst case scenario, was this guy's alarm set when his house was broken into? What if it wasn't set? Then what happens?
Yeah, you'd still be covered. It'd be pretty hard for an insurance company to deny a claim because, it's mandatory that you have an alarm system, but, life kind of gets in the way. Like you just said, you're going to pick up your kids. You don't put the alarm on. Some people forget. We've had a situation. I mean, I can get into a claim scenario. We did have a situation where that happened. It wasn't for sports cards. It was for watches. They broke in and the insurance company paid the claim, even though the alarm system was not on.
Yeah, I think that's one of these little nuggets of information that is you're not going to find this out, guys, unless you're listening to the show with Enzo Ferrari, who has 902 Vintage says this guy has the best name in the business. Listen, when I first met you and you gave me your card at the National in Cleveland there, I had to do like a second take. I'm like, Why Enzo Ferrari? Like, are you Enzo Ferrari? But you have the exact same name as the founder of Ferrari.
Yes, I do. And believe me, people remind me every day. I get at least one comment. And so, I kind of have fun with it. So, but I'm kind of used to the ribbing.
You must be. Just, I get asked every day if, how tall you are. How's the air up there? Do you play basketball? All these things. I know what it's like to have something about you that people ask about on a daily basis. Not Funny has a great question. Can you insure against self-inflicted damage to cards? And what I think he's talking about here, Enzo, might be like, I'm organizing my cards. I'm maybe sorting them. I'm preparing for a card show. I drop one and it goes from being, call it a PSA 10 to a PSA 3 because now it's got a bent corner. What can you tell us about that scenario?
Yeah, again, now we're getting into like more detailed claims, and we'd have to know more about the claim in terms of what exactly happened, how we determine the value. So it's tough for me to answer every claim question because there could be like a million different scenarios. But self-inflicted, again, it's almost like leaving your card in the sunlight. Yet you really got to take care, and it's, if you need a new paint job on your car and you give your car a key job, the insurance company isn't really going to pay for the new paint job. So it's kind of similar to that. But again, I always encourage people, again, I've been in the business 25 plus years in the insurance company. I never deny a claim. I always say, let's report it. Let the insurance company deny it and give us the reasons for if they decide to deny it. That way, I know, everybody knows, but I never deny a claim. I'm a broker. We're kind of the middleman in between this. So we always suggest if you really want to put a claim in, if it's worth the value, obviously, if it's a few $100s, we're going to say, why would you do something like that? Why would you put a claim in? But if it's something significant, again, we report it to the insurance company and then we let them really do their investigation and then decide, is it covered? Is it not covered? And they will give us the reasons. And if you can live with it, great. If not, well, then you can always take it a step further and take it to the next level when it comes to it.
And here's a question from Mike. He says, how detailed are the insurance policies? I understand how graded cards can be insured. Condition is verified by the third party. But what about raw cards? How do we prove condition? And that's because condition is going to be related to value.
Yeah, this is where we put a lot of trust in our clients. We have to rely on them to tell us what the values are. If they're ungraded cards, it's a little bit harder. But again, if the way our policies really work is, any card under $15,000 in value, we don't need a schedule. Like we basically just have a blanket for all your cards under 15,000. If it's 15,000 and over, then we need to know about that card and we actually schedule it on the policy. So, it's a bit of a gray area, but again, we kind of trust our clients to tell us the truth about what the cards are, what their values are, what they have. And I'm not sure if we're going to get into like think we are going to get into like what you need to do as a client to make sure that when you do have a claim, to make sure the claims process goes smoothly, like what type of information do you want to provide the insurance company so that these kind of questions don't come up when a claim happens.
You're prepared. You've done your due diligence on your own collection ahead of time. Okay, I got a series of questions here. We're going to go to my questions now for a bit, guys. And I have a feeling that a lot of your questions out there will be covered by the ones that I've already got in my notes right in front of me. I'm traveling to a card show, Enzo. I'm covered while my cards are in my house, but now I'm going to travel from where I live to a card show. I might be, and I'm in Canada personally, but I might be going to Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Chicago, Cleveland, Burbank, Philly, Dallas, wherever I'm going. With a policy that you offer, and again, for the Americans who can't get a policy through you, this is what you want to ask. Am I covered when I'm traveling with my cards? And I'm going to take it a step further, Enzo, because when I travel, I have some cards in my carry-on, but I put some cards in my bigger suitcase that goes in the belly of the airplane. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me if I'm covered in those situations? Are those cards covered if my baggage doesn't show up, if someone swipes my carry-on right out from under me?
Yeah, so the answer to your first question, coverage is global, so it's worldwide coverage. So wherever your cards are, they're covered, so they don't have to be just in your house. So in transit, card shows, anything of that nature, wherever you're bringing your cards, they're covered. As for whether they're the underbelly of a plane or on a carry-on, again, same thing. They are covered 100%. If they go missing, obviously, if your luggage goes missing, that's covered. I mean, it's again worldwide coverage. It doesn't have to be inside your house. It's anywhere you go, any car. And this is why I brought up that point before when I was at the National watching guys walk around with little carry-on, little suitcases filled with cards, or they're at a restaurant. I think we were at the restaurant at eBay, the eBay function, and there was a guy there with, I think, a $2 million little case there. And I was, being an insurance guy, my heart stopped thinking like, what are you doing? As long as he had insurance, he's fine. But if he doesn't, it doesn't take much for somebody to come in and swipe those cards. But the basic answer to your question is yes, that would be covered under a policy.
Now, what if I'm going to one of these card shows globally, but I'm not going as a attendee? I'm actually going to go set up as a vendor. Am I covered with my collection / inventory under a PCI for private collection insurance, your company? Am I covered when I'm set up as a business, as a vendor at a card show as well?
Yes, absolutely. So again, you're a vendor at a card show, you're covered 100%. We offer commercial policies as well. If somebody has a bricks and mortar building, we can do retail shops. Again, not just cards, but anything, any kind of collectible or high valued item. But again, yes, 100% you're covered if you are a vendor at a card show.
Now, let's say I'm a vendor at a card show and I've got my policy with you, covers me. Say I've got $250,000 in coverage and I've got my $15,000 cards that are scheduled, listed, like itemized. And then I've got my umbrella items that are maybe, no single card's worth more than 15 grand, but I could have 200 grand worth of cards right there or whatever that number is. Let's say I'm at the show and I buy a card off a guy for $5,000 and it gets swiped from me 5 minutes later. So I had, and let's say I buy a card off a guy for $15,000, which should be a scheduled item. Right. And I lay out the cash or I lay out a trade. I trade whatever it is. And that card gets swiped out right from under me, like this gentleman in Philly who lost his 1933 Gaudi Babe Ruth last weekend. What is the process there? Am I covered when I literally just got the card 5 minutes ago and it gets stolen, and I may not even realize it got stolen for, anywhere from 5 minutes to, I'm packing up at the end of the weekend, which hopefully you would know, but I'm sure that could happen. What are your thoughts on that sort of scenario?
Yeah, normally that would be covered. Again, we'd have to obviously investigate the claim and make sure you did buy the card, and, taking a picture of the card, getting a receipt that you've purchased the card, who you bought it from. Anything you can do to mitigate the insurance company's questions as to whether or not you actually had that card is very, very important. So, everybody's walking around with a cell phone these days. If you are buying a high valued card, again, if it's a $300-400 card, it's going to fall under your blanket policy. Anything under 15K is going to be covered anyway. But it's those big cards that, again, I would think that if you're buying maybe a $20,000 sports card, you'd have some kind of paper trail somewhere to evidence. You would
Maybe
hope
not. So let me tell you, the Van City card show's coming up in a couple weeks. And I saw an Instagram post today from one of the vendors who said, I've actually seen two posts now. One vendor said, we are spending $100,000 at the show cash. So they're going to have 100 grand with them. And I heard that Alt is coming up and they're going to have, I think, $400,000 in cash in the room. So, and listen, someone could, I might have some cash on me. Someone could come up to me with the card and I might lay out, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, $10,000. There's no paper trail for that. So because I don't want to have an insurance policy and then not have a claim be honored. What do I need to, and I think this goes for not just if you're being insured, but just as a best practice. What should we be doing to ensure, like, is it as simple as taking a picture of the card with the money on the table? Do I need to take a picture of the person I'm dealing with? Because not everyone's going to be okay with that. And then the other thing is you say get a receipt, but casual people, casual people can still sell cards for 5 figures. They don't necessarily issue receipts on hand. So is the best, and this is my idea, is the best practice as a vendor at a card show, should I have a receipt book with me to to really give to the person who comes up to me and say, hey, this is going to be the receipt that you are issuing me so that I have evidence that I paid you $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 for this card. Is that enough?
That would be ideal. Obviously, if you can get a receipt with the vendor's name on it, a phone number, what the card was, like that is ideal. But I understand, like I said, I'm in the hobby as well. I see how the transactions happen all the time without any kind of receipt. So, if something does happen where you can't get a receipt or there is no receipt, at least know who the person you're buying the card from. So if the insurance company needs to follow up and say, hey, did this person buy the sports card from you? What was the amount? At least you have, if it's not a business, if it's a personal, a private seller, you have to have something. Again, a picture of the card would be great, but you could take a picture of a card. Doesn't necessarily mean that you purchased the card. So anything, again, when you have a claim, you have to think almost like an insurance company. I mean, what would you give them to prove that you had the card? And again, it's just protecting you. We don't want to call, the government or pay the taxes on these things. I understand how some of this stuff works, but if it's a high valued card, I mean, I'd strongly get something in writing, some kind of receipt.
And as I said, I don't think we as card show vendors can expect the casual collector to come up to us and have a receipt book on hand. So that's why it might be one of those things that you put into your card show supply inventory that you take with you, along with top loaders and sleeves and a loop. Maybe you all price tags and a pen. You might also want to have a receipt book, not for when, well, you can use it when you're selling cards too, but also when you're buying cards. Have the to and the from being in the other direction, even though you're the person behind the table buying the card. Like you said, that would be ideal. I think that's something that I'm going to be adding to what I'm bringing to card shows, is that receipt book, because of this discussion right here, right now. So I think that's really, really important stuff right there. Let's say I'm at a card show or I'm at home, whatever, and I do have a $30,000 card, whatever the value, gets swiped off my table, gets stolen from my home. I'm having a cocktail party at the house here, let's say, and somebody makes their way into my office and, they swipe a card from me, and I realize that, the next morning. What is the process that I'm going to go through in order to receive my insurance proceeds from that occurrence?
Well, we obviously report the claim to the insurance company. We would hire a third-party adjusting firm that comes out and does the investigation. And usually it's a seamless process. Again, if it's mysterious disappearance, that's one of the big things that we can't say to them, I don't know what happened to it. We have to have some kind of proof that somebody did take the card. And again, if you're leaving your cards lying around during a cocktail party and somebody swipes it, again, what are we going to tell the insurance company? We have to have some kind of proof that the card was there and then it was missing the next day. Usually at card shows, there's security, there's video cameras. You can kind of see that something's happened. A police report. If you file a police report, 99.9% of the times, the insurance company is going to trust the fact that you called the police and investigated the fact that you lost a $30,000 card. They will pay the claim. So usually it's a seamless process. It's gathering information, the third party, and if there's any dispute with the amount being paid, we have appraisers too that we come in and hopefully settle the claim to everybody's satisfaction.
So we talked about when we're traveling to and from card shows. We've talked about being set up at card shows. Now, what about if I'm sending my cards off to a grading company, or I'm sending my cards off to a consignment seller, or I've sold the card online, a private online deal via Instagram or Facebook, or even an eBay deal, let's say, and the card goes missing in transit? Does private collection insurance and, say, similar U.S. services, U.S.-based services, cover those sorts of losses?
Yeah, I don't know about other services, but our policy automatically includes transit. So if you're shipping your cards to PSA, a grader, or a third-party seller, 100% it's covered. Again, the beauty of, I'm a collector. So when I set up this company and I set up programs specifically for sports cards, I kind of knew what the hot buttons were and what I do with my collection. I ship my cards to PSA as well to get graded. And, while they're in transit, if something happens, there's a receipt, obviously, of the value. We got the PSA forms, or wherever you're sending it, the grading form. We have the values of those cards. So again, long answer to your short question, but 100% transit is covered.
Awesome to hear. Phil in the chat raises a question, but first, a quick announcement, everybody. Rage has entered the building, everybody. Rage is in the building. Phil has a question for you, Enzo. He says, does the insurance policy holder ever get a surprise visit from the broker or underwriters to see if the insured items are still in the owner's possession? For example, a bad entrepreneur, again, I think he means like a bad man, a bad actor, could borrow his buddy's card, insure it, and then give it back to that person. Obviously, people are going to be thinking about ways to commit insurance fraud here, and it's probably going to happen one way or another, as I'm sure you've experienced in your career insuring anything and everything. How do you respond to Phil's comments here?
Again, we can't control that. If you're going to commit insurance fraud, that does happen in the industry. It doesn't just happen in sports cards. It happens in jewelry, watches, auto insurance and auto insurance fraud. There's all kinds of fraud out there. So, again, I've been in the hobby for a few years now. I know it's a very good community. It's very trustworthy. I've made deals over the internet or over Instagram. It's never gone sideways. But at the end of the day, we have to trust that our clientele is going to be honest. And if you're really willing to take a chance to commit fraud, there's really nothing I can do about that.
Okay, we have some other great questions coming in through the chat. I'm not sure if you're aware of the big Dallas card show heist. $2 million of cards were stolen. You must be aware of that.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? The question here is, does seller negligence void a claim? I mean, it was on camera. You can see it happening, but I mean, these guys were pros. They distracted him. Let's just, what do you think? Would that scenario be covered by insurance?
100%. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Let's move on. And unless there's something you want to add to that, that's,
No, that would be covered. Yeah.
Reginaldo says, how do you deal with clients who would be upset their claim is not as high as they thought because the market value of their card went down when the insurance claim was made? And this is on my list, guys. Said I had it ready. I had set ready to ask you, is the insurance claim going to cover my cost or my replacement cost?
So the whole purpose of an insurance policy is to put you back to where you were before the claim. So if you bought a card for $10,000 and it's only worth $5,000 today, we're not going to give you the $10,000 like that. It doesn't work that way. It's going to go by market value, and unfortunately, it's almost like a commodity. If the prices go down, I mean, the benefit is you can always insure it for less than, if you bought it for 10 and you insured it for 10, you should be insuring it for 5. But they would not give you the 10,000. You would receive the 5,000. Because
then, theoretically you can go out and buy and this hobby we're so nuanced here, right? Like no two copies are the same anyway, but you can at least, if it's a graded card, you can go buy, you can go replace it with at least a card in a similar grade. And that's what the insurance, I'm no pro, but that's kind of what the insurance company would have to base the claim, or the proceeds on, right? The insurance proceeds. So that makes sense. Here's a great question from Gross Bros. Says, for people who split up their collection into multiple households, would they still be covered for the full amount of the collection or for only the cards in the insurance holder's house? And I'm thinking about a situation here where maybe you have multiple houses. Maybe you have a vacation home and you have some cards down in Palm Springs and you have some cards up in Toronto or whatever it might be. How do you respond to this question?
You should be reporting all your houses or where all the cards are located, because one of the key questions that we ask is there an alarm system in the house? So if you're keeping it at multiple locations, you should notify us that both locations or 5 locations all have because you might keep some at your office where you might like me, I have some in my office and I have some at home. So I would specifically make sure I list where they're insured, like both locations are on the policy, and that the broker or whoever you're dealing with is aware of where these cards are stored.
Now, you mentioned earlier that having an alarm system in the homes that you store your cards in is a requirement. But a safe, you said, is not a requirement. But let's say I do have a safe. Is that going to bring my premiums down?
Yes. Normally, like we have some set policy premiums, but the higher the collection, the more security the insurance company is going to want to see. So if you have millions of dollars in cards, a safe might actually be mandatory at that point. But it does help in terms of premiums. The more security and the more things we can tell the underwriters at the insurance company that you have, the more secure they're going to be and the better premium that you're going to have.
Now, let's talk about deductibles for a second, because I know I've got home insurance and auto insurance. I've been an insurance customer for decades now, and deductibles are something that always kind of piss me off, especially when I make a claim and if my deductible goes up. So two questions here. Number one, can you buy down the deductible by paying a higher premium? And number two, if I do make a claim, will my deductible escalate?
So again, the beauty of our program is there is no deductible. We have a $0 deductible. Yeah. So, if you have a claim, you're not going to have to worry about your deductible going up. If you have multiple claims, you might have to worry about being able to buy insurance. Obviously, if you have too many claims, it becomes difficult. But in terms of deductible, again, I've set up the program. Like if I had to buy this for myself, I set it up with a $0 deductible so that you don't have to worry about that.
I love to hear that. Great question here from Luke F73. Now it's not you, it's the insurance company. You're the broker, but how would you determine the insurance payout value for cards that have no public sales records? Is it going to be based on your proof of purchase? Now, just for an example, Enzo, think of like a very valuable one-of-one card that I bought in say 2005 for $400, but I feel it might be worth $40,000 right now if I were to sell it. And we've seen situations like that where you can hold the card for 20 years, but there's no comps on it. It is not a commodity in that manner because there is nothing to hang your hat on in terms of value. Do you know how the insurance company would approach an asset like that?
Yeah, they would hire an appraiser, and they might hire two to get a couple of values in terms of the card. So, and a lot of it's going to depend on what are you insuring this card for as well. So, but the big thing is, like I said, they'll hire an appraiser, and usually if you're not happy with what the first appraiser comes back with, you could hire a second one or even hire your own independent appraiser to have a value placed on that card.
So you said it depends what you insured at, and that speaks to with PCI, which is your company, Private Collection Insurance. That speaks to the $15,000 and up items that you are specifically itemizing on the schedule. So if I have a card that I bought for $400 15 years ago or even 5 years ago, and now I think it's worth $40,000, I would need to itemize it at 40 grand. And then Luke's question is covered. They may hire the appraiser to verify, but at least that's the starting point. Now they have to prove it's not worth 40,000. Is that right? Or do I have to prove it is worth 40?
Well, if you're insuring it for 40, they'll still do an investigation on the card in terms of to make sure it is of that value. But again, if you why would you insure a card for 40,000 if it's not worth 40,000? And again, we'd hire independent adjusters and appraisers to make sure that you're satisfied with the claim.
Papa Jim says, I have more memorabilia such as bats, gloves, jerseys, game used items, more than just cards. Is there a difference in insuring that rather than cards only?
A little bit, but not much. It's the same. It falls into the same category. Like I said, at PCI, we insure music collections, comic books, everything. So memorabilia, coins, gold, silver, diamonds, watches, whatever, anything of high value, we insure, and we've seen it. Specifically to this question, again, memorabilia, a lot of people keep it in their basement. And some of the requirements that we have is, is it lying on the floor? Is it in a cardboard box where, you have a flood or a sewer backup? All of a sudden now your entire collection, your memorabilia is wiped out. So again, these are the kind of things that we ask ahead of time. And there is a little bit of a difference because memorabilia, again, it's a different product. So, but it's very similar. It's not much different.
But can I put them on the same schedule in the same policy as my cards? So it's only one policy with PCI.
Yeah. So to give you an example, I'm a client of my own company. Obviously, I have my sports cards, I have my watches, I have my wife's rings and diamonds. I have my wife's purses on there because she likes to collect uh, those valuable little leather things. So it's one policy. So we just did one recently where he had sneakers, like people collect all kinds of things. So it's one policy, and we kind of break it down into different sections, obviously, to show the values of different items. But again, that's the beauty. The policy set up where you don't have to deal with 15 different policies. It's all one schedule.
Do I need an appraisal before I receive coverage from you?
No, appraisal is not mandatory.
Do I need to insure my entire collection to have a policy with you?
No, you can insure specific items if you'd like.
Now, do you have to schedule every card? Because now I know you said no, 15,000 and up, but I'm just thinking, I'm just looking at my notes here. Cards go up and down in value all the time. So like, what happens if I have a card that when I got the insurance policy, it was worth $1,000 to $14,999. Never mind, $1 to $14,999. And then all of a sudden, at some point after I receive my policy from you, I feel that card is worth more than $15,000. What is required of me at that point?
Always notify us. You have to make the call. Like the onus, unfortunately, is on the client to make sure that his collection is up to date. The values are up to date. I mean, you don't have to call every other day. I mean, that would be kind of crazy. And I think you'd get fired as a client if that happened. But I think you should really take a look at your collection every 6 months to make sure the values are correct and accurate. Because again, I know the hobby very well. We all buy and sell, and the values fluctuate, not only with buying and selling, just the actual value goes up and down.
Every day, every single day, these things, it's so volatile, especially in the last 5 years. It is very volatile. So the best practice there then is every 6 months to go through your collection and identify those $15,000 and up items, send you the revised schedule, and then also look at what's the total value of all your items that are worth under 15,000 and send that in. Now, if my original policy was for $250,000, but now I feel my collection is worth $300,000, is my premium, my monthly or annual premium going to go up from that moment forward?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it go up a little. Yeah.
Of course. Speaking of that, what does it cost? How much does it cost to insure a collection? Like, can you share with us a, X amount per $1,000 of value sort of thing as to what these premiums are going to look like on a monthly, or maybe annual is easier to do, on an annual basis?
Yeah. So we have a couple of programs, again, for some smaller collections, but for a $50,000 collection of sports cards, you're looking at $350 a year, which is not a lot of money. And for $500,000 of coverage. So again, that's a big number. I mean, probably not everybody has a $500,000 and up collection. So,
but more than you might imagine in this space right now.
Probably. Yeah. Because again, it's just exploding. The values are crazy and more people are getting into it. But for $500,000, you're looking at $2,500 a year, which is really, that is not a lot of premium, considering what we're insuring and what the possible payout can be. And that is one of the biggest things when I say about educating the hobby is most people think that the cost of insurance is astronomical. So they don't even inquire about it because they just think it's, it's insurance, not the sexiest product in the world. They think it's going to be very cost prohibitive, but it's actually very affordable. And again, as you could probably tell by some of the coverage features that I told you about, it's pretty comprehensive coverage. So we've kind of covered all the bases for your collection.
It's going to be a lot. It might not be a sexy product, when you haven't had a problem, but when you have that problem, it's going to be the sexiest thing you've ever seen. So I can see that. Good evening to my friend Jay-Z, who will be at the Van City Card Show. By the way, guys, I want to Enzo, and I want to thank you because you are. So I've been hosting networking events at the Toronto Sport Card Expo for about 15 years now, and I'm taking it out to the Van City Card Show Friday night. I will be hosting a networking event for all the vendors and anyone else who wants to come out and you are sponsoring the appetizers for that event. So I want to thank you for that. It's a wonderful thing. Guys, notice we have his logo beneath him and I there across the bottom of the board, Private Collection Insurance. And if you want to reach out to Enzo for any questions, info@privatecollectioninsurance.com. And again, but keep in mind, he can only insure you if you are a Canadian resident collection. Canadian resident collection. But this episode, I really think adds a lot of value no matter where you live, because he's giving us so much information about what the insurance possibilities are out there. And I know we've got a lot of viewers that have at least $50,000 worth of collections. My friend Jay-Z himself, I don't know what his is worth, but he collects early vintage hockey. So I think he might be a good potential candidate. But Jay-Z, if you just got here, this is an episode you definitely need to watch. Perch says, Enzo is great. This has been awesome so far. Thanks, Perch. Appreciate that quite a bit. We've gotten through my notes. I think we've covered just about everything, Enzo. I want to leave it open to the chat. We have a few more minutes here. So to the chat, if you have any more questions, get them in there right away as fast as you can. Enzo, is there anything else that you feel is pertinent to share at this point?
Other than, like I said, like, look into it. We're here, even your US customers. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to help out. If you have any questions, if you're dealing with anybody in the US and you have extra questions, more than happy to help out. We're here. I'm really here to help the hobby and educate people. We're really trying to bring this to the forefront and make people understand insurance is important. Again, it's my life. I kind of do that for a living. So it's very important to me. And I want to make sure that if you do have a collection, it's not only monetary, but it's your passion, it's your dedication, and the years that you've spent probably collecting and making those sets. I know I'm working through a set. One day, hopefully I finish it, and the insurance would never be able to replace that passion, but at least it'd make me feel a lot better knowing that I get at least my money back for all the work I put into it.
We have a couple of questions that just came in, and I just want to mention also that I first heard of you when I received an email from the Sport Card Expo where you were offering insurance for vendors just for the weekend of the show. So you will offer, an annual insurance policy that it renews every year, I suppose, but you will also automatically renews, but you also offer kind of short-term policies if anybody ever needs that. If you feel safe in your own home, but you are traveling and you want to be covered while you are traveling to a card show, let's say, you will offer those short-term policies. And I know that, but also, Enzo, with that, let's say I'm an American and I'm going to enter Canada for a card show. Like, we have American vendors coming up to the Expo all the time, the Van City Card Show. Can you offer them insurance only while they are in Canada?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not 100% sure. That question's never been asked. But as long as it's in Canada, I don't see what the issue is going to be, especially if it's for a sports card show and it's just like a weekend event for 3 or 4 days. I don't see that as a problem. I'm pretty sure we can.
So there's one way that you can actually help some American viewers and listeners right now. Steve Audio wants to know, how much should your collection be worth at a minimum to consider? I think we chatted about that earlier, but just throw out a number there, what you think is worthwhile.
Again, anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000. I think that's when you start to get into like the pain points where do you really want to lose $5,000 or $10,000 of your hard-earned money?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really an individual sort of thing. Just like I always say, whenever I spend significant money on a card, I consider it an asset as well as a collectible, not just a collectible. I think the same thing what risk are you willing to take holding these cards? To purchase question, he did mention, yes, these policies do cover any type of collectible that a person owns. Is there anything that you guys wouldn't cover? Like, if I collect teddy bears, or if I collect seashells or spoons, like, is there anything that you don't cover?
Not really. I mean, anything collectible, as long as there's a value to it, and it's trackable, obviously. Seashells, I'm not sure what the value of seashells are.
I just thought
yeah, I know. But like teddy bears.
Antiques, old,
yes.
Video games, electronics. I'm looking at, Lego, pictures of my kids, pin sets. But anyway, pretty much everything is is covered. But if you want to have more questions, you can reach out. You can reach out to Enzo directly. info@privatecollectioninsurance.com. Papa Jim, appreciate you being here and taking this in. Robert Scott says premiums seem reasonable, nothing but upside. Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. Well, all right, guys, this is a Sports Cards Light episode, not the usual 2-hour-long Sports Cards Live. We are going to end this under an hour, which I'm happy we can do. Hopefully, this is some nice evergreen content moving forward for people. Enzo, thank you for joining. Thank you for sponsoring the episode and for also sponsoring the appetizers of the Van City Card Show. Really appreciate that. I think we're done.
Thank you.
Do you have any more cards on your desk you can just show us?
Well, I mean, the big ones are the Ferrari logo cards. These are huge logo cards. And then this is the card that really got my passion going again. I mean, a big Wayne Gretzky card.
Keep it there. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That looks like a nice copy from what I can see. I think that's a 5. Is that right?
It's a 5. Yeah. This was in my basement for about 25 years in a box, in a Tupperware box, and moved with me to 3 different houses. And that's kind of what got me back into collecting again. When I found out what a PSA 10 was worth, I was hoping that was a PSA 10, but not even close. But
nice. And if anyone's going to be at the Van City Card Show, I will have some of Enzo's business cards, which are collectible themselves. Trust me, you want to pick up one of his business cards, and I'll have some brochures as well, so you can reach out to him once you pick that up from my table at the Van City Card Show. Lantern says, great episode, much needed. Mike Double V says, great information. Thank you to both of us. That's great. Thank you, Mike. Perch, let's go. Rob Scott says, thanks, guys. Great episode. Lots of great info, guys. All right. Thank you again, Enzo, for joining. Thank you to everyone in the chat. If you're listening, thank you for listening to the episode on podcast, guys. With that, this episode of Sports Cards Live Lite version here for September the 27th, 2024 is